Good afternoon to all. Last lecture, what we were here, and there was little bit change in the sequence, okay, which I have corrected now. Here we was that we have seen all the procedure by means of which we can design spring up to 11 point. That is, I will again just take the review of that. First thing is that load calculation, then deflection calculation, okay. Then we have to select the suitable spring material and we have to find out its shear strength. Then we have to assume suitable value for C and we have to calculate suitable value, and from that next is that we have to calculate K, that is Hall's constant. Then we have to determine wire diameter. Then we have to determine the coil diameter. Then we have to determine deflection by means of equation of deflection by considering G for that material, that is modulus of rigidity. And next we have to detect the active number of turns by selecting suitable N conditions. Then we have to determine the solid length by equation N dash, that is nothing but active number of turn multiplied by wire diameter. Then we have to determine actual deflection when you are going to consider N dash rather than N. Next, we have to assume gap between the adjacent coils as a 0.5 to 2 millimeter as per the application. Here, this we have not seen for the last lecture. It means that when we are going to assume the spring, okay, in this way for the compression condition, suppose, then we have to assume that gap between two coils, that is this gap we have to assume, and that will be value from 0.5 to 2 millimeter as per the requirement. That is nothing but you can check the design data book and recommended gaps you can use in this case. And designer can decide which value of gap we have to prepare for which application, okay. And when the spring is under the action of maximum load, at that time how much gap we have to place, that we have to decide. Then the total axial gap between the coils is given by total axial gap is calculated by means of this formula, that is NT minus 1, okay, multiplied by here N dash should be there, N dash minus 1. I will correct it, N dash value which we have calculated, okay, and minus 1 into gap between two adjacent coils. So this will become total gap, okay, and this total gap is calculated so that we can calculate the free length of that spring. Here it is written that in some cases the total axial gap is taken as 50% of maximum deflection. Directly this value can be considered, but it is for the specific or in some applications, okay. Some applications, that is nothing but which are coming under the category of industrial application, okay. In that case, it is assumed directly, it will be assumed instead of using this equation, you can directly go by means of considering that total gap as a 15% of its maximum deflection, okay. The springs which you are going to design for the industrial purpose, that is like sugarcane industries or process equipments, or where the processing is done. In that case, this type of assumption is directly made without going to this equation, okay. Then we have to determine free length of spring by means of the relationship which I have stated here. Now this relationship is nothing but free length is equal to solid length plus total gap. This total gap is calculated or assumed when this 0.5 to 2 millimeter is considered when maximum load is applied on the spring. Getting me? Or you can use this 0.15 as its total gap. This total gap value you have to use here, or you have to calculate this total gap by means of this formula, which you have to use here. plus delta. Okay, that is the maximum deflection of that spring. And this will become total length, that is free length of the spring. Already last lecture I have discussed that this free length may be having some restriction when you are going to apply it for the specific application like suspension systems. In that case, first this free length is decided as per the availability of space, and later on the remaining values are calculated that we have seen for the last lecture. Getting? But for remaining applications where the restriction is not there for the space, you can use this step and you can calculate free length. Then we have to determine the pitch of coil by means of this relationship. P is equal to free length divided by N dash here minus 1. Okay. That is NT. In Bhandari, this notation is used NT. Okay. But we have used N dash in that case. Next, once you calculate it, you can calculate the rate of spring. That is nothing but the stiffness of that spring. That is K is equal to G D raised to 4. This equation we have derived when we have seen the design of spring, helical coil spring. Okay. By means of that equation, we have to calculate the stiffness. And later on, we have to think about the support which we have discussed yesterday. There is nothing but if the spring is too long, it is going to get buckle, and hence we are going to provide the support from the outer side or from the inner side. You might have seen in conventional shock absorbers of two-wheeler, such type of cap is provided from upper or lower side to support that spring so that it is not going to get buckle. And criteria for deciding it is the free length divided by mean coil diameter. If it is less than 2.6, then we have to, okay, this is dimensionless quantity now. That's why it is 2.6. 2.6, then guide is not necessary. If it increases more than 2.6, guides are provided from inner side or from outer side. Got it? Any question related to this procedure? Let me know if you are having any question. This was the remaining part which actually we have to cover for the last lecture, but we have covered it, and now it is in right sequence. Any question? Yes, you can write in chat box. Do you have any question or not? Can we move to the further slide? Okay. Now the next point which we are going to see for the spring design is trial and error method. By means of this trial and error method, how we are going to design the spring. Now we have seen the all technical part related to the spring design. That is nothing but we have assumed the various stresses which are induced in the spring wire. And also we have taken into account that curvature effect and all that. And then afterwards, we have calculated the dimensions of the spring wire as well as spring, its free length, its maximum deflection, stiffness, all that things we have calculated. Okay. But how we can proceed for the trial and error method, that we are going to see now. In practice, helical springs are designed by means of trial and error method. No doubt that the previous design procedure is also important. Okay, it is used, but to save the time in industry, sometimes this trial and error method is used. Okay, practically. The basic procedure of spring design has been explained previously, that we have seen all the steps, okay, as well as design of helical coil spring, based on the assumption that value of tensile strength for the given grade of spring wire is constant. This is important because while we have seen all the procedure or all previous slides from design of helical spring, that all formulas which we have derived are depend upon this assumption. That is the tensile strength for the given grade of spring wire is constant, though you are going to change the diameter. That means the tensile test which we are going to conduct for that particular material we are going to take it as a base. And based on that, all tensile strength, compressive strength, then shear strength is calculated. And that we are going to take as a basic assumption, or that we are going to take as a basic thing for calculating the dimensions of that spring, or you can say for designing of that spring. Getting me? But in actual, it is observed that tensile strength of material is not constant, but it varies with the wire diameter. This is what the reality is. In case of spring wires or the material which is used for the spring, in that case, tensile strength is going to change with respect to diameter. This is what the things which arises when the actual practical is done on that spring, or practically that springs are tested. And all these things are coming from the market when that product is going to into market, and that has been used, and later on the failure reasons were find out by means of company. They have made their study, and then afterwards it has this particular sentence or this particular statement has been made. Okay, it requires a lot of experimentation also, or lot of case studies also, actual case studies. Are you getting me? So this is what actually the things which we are doing when we are designing a spring actually in industry. Getting me? By considering this assumption is good for the theoretical things, that is tensile strength is constant. But in actually, when you are going to design in industry some certain components and springs for that components, then we have to take this statement as a basic, and then afterwards we have to follow the procedure. Getting? It doesn't mean that previous things which we have learned are wrong. No, that are also correct, but theoretically they are going to support us, and practically some different picture is there. Okay. In that case also, if you are going to increase factor of safety, then they will serve as they can accommodate the change in that tensile strength as per the change in diameter of that wire. Getting? Now, for example, we are going to consider that grade 1, okay, patented cold drawn steel wire we are going to take, and for that this table has been shown. For that wire, from where this table is taken, I will tell you. This table is taken from the V.B. Bhandari 3rd edition book, that is Design of Machine Elements. Okay, later on I am going to give reference for that. From that I have taken this table. And here you can see in this table that wire diameter in millimeter has been mentioned from 0.3 millimeter to 8 millimeter. Whereas the minimum tensile strength for that wire has been mentioned here, and this minimum tensile strength has been shown in Newton per millimeter square. For example, you can take, if you are going to use 0.3 millimeter wire for the spring, which you can manufacture from that this wire 0.3 millimeter diameter wire, and it has a minimum tensile strength as a 1720 Newton per millimeter square. Whereas if you are going to take example that 2 millimeter wire is used, that strength has been decreased by, and its value is 1420 Newton per millimeter square. Whereas if you directly jump to the 8 millimeter diameter wire, its tensile strength has been decreased, and it is 1050 Newton per millimeter square. Getting me? So here you can see, because method which you are going to use for the manufacturing of that wire is cold drawn. And as you goes on increasing diameter, what is going to happen? That this material is going to become more and more hard. Okay, and that we cannot do, or that we cannot change, as this is the drawback of this manufacturing process. So we have to assume in practice these changes in the tensile strength as they are changing with the wire. So what we can do for this? So for this, I'll move to the next slide. Where we are going to find out some relationships, and based on that relationships, directly you are going to jump to the designing or finding the diameter of that wire. Getting me? So from this table, it is clearly seen that as you are going to increase the diameter, this tensile strength is going to decrease. Am I right? If you are having any question, you are free to ask at any time. You can write in chat box or you can unmute yourself and you can ask. Getting me? So from this table, as the wire diameter is 0.3, it was discussed that the minimum tensile strength is 1720. As the diameter has been increased gradually, you can see for all these wire diameters that the tensile strength is going to decrease. That is nothing but you can make assumption that, not assumption, actually this is the what practical thing, that this ultimate tensile strength is inversely proportional with the diameter. If you want to increase the ultimate tensile strength, you have to decrease the diameter. Or if the diameter is increased, this ultimate tensile strength is going to decrease. And based on this ultimate tensile strength only, you are going to find the shear stress, right, for that given wire diameter or for the given spring. And that we are going to calculate by considering as a 0.3 of its ultimate tensile strength or 0.5 of ultimate tensile strength. Okay. These IS conventions are used for that. Okay, Indian standards which are provided that are used for that. So if you are going to use this basic thing which is going to change with respect to diameter, definitely the shear stress which you are going to use to calculate the dimensions of that spring, that also is going to get changed. As per, though you are going to manufacture springs of different diameter wire of same material, then also where this basic assumption which we have made for the shear stress or for the ultimate tensile strength is going to get changed. Getting me? So indirectly from this equation number A and equation B, you can write this equation C, that as this ultimate tensile strength is depend upon the diameter of that wire, you can say, and this shear stress is depend upon ultimate tensile strength. Hence, directly this shear stress is depend upon the wire. And its proportion is that as the diameter is going to increase, shear strength is going to decrease. Already we have discussed why it is happening, because the manufacturing process which we are going to use. You can say that, sir, instead of cold drawing, if you are going to use hot drawing for the manufacturing of that wire, then what will happen? Okay, that chart I will show you. But it happens though you are going to change the manufacturing process. That is, instead of cold drawing, if you are going to use hot drawing. Getting me? But it is observed that for the spring wires, this behavior is present everywhere for every manufacturing process. And that's why this general conclusion we can make that ultimate tensile strength, as it is depend upon the diameter of that wire, shear strength of that same material, same wire is inversely proportional to the diameter of that wire. Do you have any query up till now? Let me know. Are you getting what I am saying? See, these things are applicable for the practical purpose. If somebody is going to invent new material, new methodology and all that, in that case, we can follow the previous things which we have discussed by assuming that tensile strength is constant for given material for all diameters of that spring wire. Are you getting me what I am saying? Let me know. Hello? Rahul Chaudhary, are you getting me what I am saying? Can you unmute yourself? Rahul Chaudhary, are you present in class? Hello? Balaji?
Yes, sir.
Okay, are you getting what I am saying?
Yes, sir. Understood.
Okay. Yes, Shubham has given, Balaji is given. Okay. So next we'll go to the next point, and that is that how you are going to calculate the diameter of this wire if you are knowing the shear stress. This formula which we have derived, okay, for the shear stress by means of considering this Hall's constant, by considering the curvature effect also, that this shear stress is equal to K, that is Hall's factor or stress concentration factor, multiplied by 8 applied load P into spring index C divided by pi d square. Okay, where d is the diameter of wire. And from that diameter of wire, rest of dimensions can be calculated, that is coil diameter and free length, solid length, deflection, all that. Okay, but here we are going to decide the wire diameter by means of this, considering this shear stress. Okay, from this equation, what we can conclude that this shear stress is inversely proportional to the diameter square, because K is constant, 8 is constant. If applied load is constant, spring index is also constant, pi is universal constant. So all these constants are there. Okay. Then the shear stress is directly inversely proportional to what? D square. Here we have made this conclusion that shear stress is inversely proportional with the D diameter. But here it has been shown, or from this equation we can conclude that shear stress is directly proportional to the diameter square. For this we have used basic as a ultimate tensile strength. Here we have used the formula which we have derived for shear stress. From these two equations, that is nothing but equation C and E, what we can conclude? That this equation C and E, it is observed that the permissible stress or shear stress is inversely proportional to, first of all, 1 by D. Okay, that is diameter only. But it is, from the second equation, we can conclude that it is inversely proportional to square of that diameter. And this both stresses depends on wire diameter. That means wire diameter is regulating the shear stress. Okay, so such problems can be solved by means of trial and error method, and we can use this equation which we have derived as a B and D. That is nothing but this equation. Equation B, which we have derived from this, we can calculate the shear stress, permissible shear stress, and D equation we can use for calculating diameter of that wire. Are you getting me? And for that, some steps are followed. These are the 5 steps which we can follow for calculating the diameter or designing the helical coil spring by means of trial and error method. Now, what exactly this trial and error method is? This trial and have you previously come across with this such type of trial and error method anyhow in previous course or in prerequisites of our subject PMD? Or first time you are coming across with the trial and error method? Let me know. Anywhere have you used this trial and error method for calculating any dimension or some parameters from graph, or by means of using some Molar charts or some charts which are required to use for calculating some of the quantities? Let me know. Have you used this type of method? Yes, please answer me in chat box. ह्याच्या अगोदर कधी ट्रायल अँड एरर मेथड वापरली का कुठल्या काही गोष्टी कॅल्क्युलेट करण्यासाठी? मेनली नाही वापरलेली. थर्मोडायनॅमिक्स मध्ये किंवा FM मध्ये, फ्लुइड मेकॅनिक्स किंवा फ्लुइड मशिनरी मध्ये, जसं की ह्युमिडिटी कॅल्क्युलेट करण्यासाठी किंवा मोलर चार्ट वगैरे तुम्ही वापरला असेल. मोलर चार्ट वापरलाय थर्मोडायनॅमिक्स साठी? Balaji is saying no. But my question is that have you used molar chart, Balaji?
Yes, sir.
Yes. In that case, while deciding the values which are present on the graph, have you used such method, the trial and error method? If the suitable value or the results are not matching with some parameters which you might have assumed, then we have to select next quantity. Have you done
Yes,
such
sir.
things?
Yes.
That is what we are going to call it as a trial and error method. In this case also, let us discuss how this trial and error method is used in case of spring design. First step is that we have to assume some wire diameter. Our design is going to start with the assumption of that diameter of that wire. Okay. Suppose for particular application, we decide that 10 millimeter wire can be used, and from that we can manufacture the coil or spring. Okay. We have used. Okay, no problem. So in that case, we are going to assume that wire diameter. Remember this first step. Okay. Once you assume that wire diameter, then we have to find out the corresponding tensile strength from the table which has been provided. Now this table has been provided to the next slide. Okay, we'll see on that next slide also. Let us first, we'll go through all this procedure and then afterwards we'll go to the next slide. Okay, this wire diameter relationship with the tensile strength has been provided, and using this value we have to find out the permissible shear stress by means of equation which we have derived previously. That is nothing but 0.3 of ultimate tensile strength or 0.5 of ultimate tensile strength. Whichever equation you want to use, that equation we have to use. Okay, 0.5 or 0.3 of SUT. Once you use this equation, you are going to find out allowable shear stress or permissible shear stress. And once you find out the permissible shear stress, then we can find the induced value of stresses. That is for that particular diameter. What is that equation? That tau is equal to K multiplied by 8P D divided by pi d square. Okay. In this equation, what we are going to calculate by considering suitable spring index. Yet we have not calculated the coil diameter, but we are going to select the value of spring index based on its application as we have seen in the previous slide. Getting now 8 is constant. P, that is the for load which is applied on the spring. That value you are knowing because in first step only you are going to calculate it. Okay, in the previous slide. Or normally this load is known for which we have to design the spring. Then by considering suitable value of C, we are going to calculate D also. Then K value is also calculated. And from the decided value or selected or assumed value, you are going to put here and you are going to calculate the value of shear stress. We have to check in the next step whether this permissible shear stress is more than induced one. That is, here you are going to get directly value of induced stress for the diameter D for given application of load or given applied load. Once you calculate this value of shear stress, We have to just check whether it is below this permissible shear stress. And if it is below the permissible shear stress, then you can use that same wire diameter and you can go for the designing of that rest of the dimensions, rest of the quantities of that spring. And if not, if it is not less than the value, okay, for simplicity, we'll call it as a induced stresses. I will use suffix E. And for this, we'll calculate the allowable shear stresses, A. If this E, induced shear stresses, are not less than the allowable shear stresses, then we have to again go back and we have to select the wire diameter, different wire diameter. And we have to repeat all these 3 steps. Okay, sorry, all 4 steps are part of this 4 step up to this statement. Again, if the induced shear stresses are not less than the allowable shear stresses, we have to go for deciding or finding or selecting different diameter. Not finding actually. From table, you have to just select it. Okay. Then we have to select different diameter, higher diameter, and then again we have to check it. The above method or above mentioned procedure is repeated till the value of induced shear stresses is not less than permissible shear stresses. Okay, this all step you have to repeat again and again. And experienced designers are not required to repeat this particular process in first step only or in first try only. They are going to get this value, that is permissible shear stress value greater than the allowable or the shear stress which has been generated, which you are going to calculate by means of K multiplied by 8P into D divided by pi small d square equation. Getting me? This is what the simple trial and error method. Any question? Let me know if you are having any question related to these 5 steps and discussion which we have done regarding the ultimate tensile strength, shear stress, which is depend upon the diameter of wire. Any question? Yes? Do you have any question? Let me know. If not, can we move further? Hello? Will you please respond? Yes, can we move further? Okay. Yeah. Now here I have mentioned that tables which are available for deciding the wire diameter, which I am going to show on the next slide. Now here, this is the mechanical properties of patented and cold drawn steel wires. Okay. And next, here it is hardened, oil hardened and tempered spring wires. Okay. And wall spring wires, that is nothing but normally which are used for the wall steel or wall springs, which are unalloyed steel. Sometimes this cold procedure or cold drawn procedure is used for the, not sometimes, but for the manufacturing of alloyed steel, this procedure is used. And I have taken these values or these tables from Design of Machine Elements by V.B. Bhandari. Publisher is the McGraw Hill publication, and it is 3rd edition. You can find on page number 402. This table you can find in that book. Okay, you can use that for the reference, and later on you can give reference for your design when you are going to design a spring by means of trial and error method. Okay, so in this table you can see part of this table we have discussed previously to understand what the procedure is and why we are doing this procedure. Okay, this is the part of that particular table only. Okay, so from 0.3 millimeter diameter to 8 millimeter diameter, we have used this table. Now this grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, grade 4, these are the grades of the steel which we are going to use for the spring manufacturing. Okay, this grade value is depend upon how much you have alloyed other metals in that steel. Okay, that is nothing but percentage of carbon and all other alloys, alloy materials which we are going to use in that steel wire. Okay, you can just go through metallurgy, that is the course which you are learning right now, and you can just find out that what is meaning by grade 1, how much that percentage is there for the carbon and other alloy materials in that particular steel. Okay, now here from this table, as this table I have written in two parts, basically it is one table only. Okay, but as I was not able to put it in one slide, that's why I have separated it. Okay, but it is a basically single table only. So for various grades of that steel wire, the strength, tensile strength, minimum tensile strength is given in Newton per millimeter square. Okay, and this wire diameter has been mentioned from 0.3 to 8 millimeter. Okay, and yes, Balaji, any question?
No, sir.
No. Okay. Now, this type of table is available even for the wire diameter more than 8 millimeter. Okay. But for that, you have to search it in design data book. Okay. PSG Gill, actually Gill is the right author of that design data book. So you have to refer that design data book. In that design data book or IS standards which are provided by Indian government, that or which is published by the Indian government, this table you will find in that IS books also. Getting me? And from this table, we can use or we can choose suitable wire diameter, and you have to follow the procedure which we have discussed on this slide. Now, this is the second table which is used when the steel wire has been formed from oil hardened, that is hardening process is done on the steel so that the upper layer or upper what we can skin of that wire or that material will get hardened, and remaining portion from the inside it will remains as a ductile. Okay, so that we are going to do the heat treatment on that wire. Or you might have studied it in metallurgy, that TTT diagram, based on cooling rate, how the hardness of any material is depend, particularly steel. Iron carbide equilibrium diagram also you might have studied, and you might have studied the properties of that iron carbide equilibrium diagram and TTT diagram. That is how we can do the heat treatment on steel. Now, if such type of heat treatments are done on that wire, then how the strength is going to affect or change, that we are going to see in this table. If the wire diameter is 1 millimeter, then its minimum tensile strength, if it is done by the oil hardened or tempered spring, okay, that is tempering is again we can say one of the heat treatment which we are going to do for increasing its strength. Okay, wear strength is increased because of that. In that case, this 760 Newton per millimeter is the tensile strength, minimum tensile strength. Okay. And likewise, it has given up to 10 millimeter diameter. Any question related to this? Hello? No. Okay, no problem. Now just give me 1 minute. As we have finished unit number 5, we are going to have this last unit, and that name of that unit is design of joints. Now in this unit, what we are going to see, first of all, we are going to see bolted joint. In that bolted joint, we are going to see simple analysis, then eccentrically loaded bolted joints, and how the shear is occurring in that. An eccentric loaded perpendicular to the axis of bolt. Okay, here numerical treatment is there. That is nothing but we are going to solve some numericals in which we have to design these bolted joints. Okay, but that we are going to see up to static load. No dynamic load is considered under this design. Then we are going to see welded joints. In that case, we are going to calculate strength of butt welds and transverse fillet welds, axially loaded or unsymmetrically lap joint, then eccentric loading on welded joint in shear. Okay, this we are going to study in the same unit, but under the title welded joints. And later on, we are going to study riveted joints, that is type of failure and strength equations for the riveted joints, on which it is not necessary to see any example or problems related to that. Problem will be there only on bolted joints and welded joints. Got it? Now, as we have seen, design of joints, the rest of part is of, okay, I have shared. Now, in case of these bolted joints, one by one, we'll see all these types of joint. But basically, let me ask one question that where you have seen such type of joints and what is the purpose of these joints? Can anybody of you answer me that? First question is that where you have seen this type of joints, and next question is that what is the purpose for which this joint is done?
At coupling.
At coupling, which type of joint you have seen? Bolted
joint.
Bolted joint you have seen. Okay. And what is the purpose of that?
It is easy to rejoint.
Okay. Bolted joint.
Disassemble.
It is easy to disassemble. It is easy to assemble also. Okay. And basically, when you want to connect two different parts together as per the requirement of that particular machinery, you are going to join two different materials or same materials together. There might be change in the geometry, there might be change in the material properties, or there might be change the different components. These components, when you are going to join together, is going to form a machinery. Getting me? And in that case, when you are going to join these two components permanently with each other without having any degree of freedom in between them, then we are going to use these joints for that particular components. For example, when you are going to design a frame of machinery, at that time there are some vertical members and horizontal members. But these vertical and horizontal members are connected with each other firmly, and they are going to form a rigid support for that particular machinery as a base of that machinery. Am I right? So in that case, you can take example of simple table, study table, in which one square frame or rectangular frame is connected with the vertical members. Okay, that is legs of the table. And that is permanently connected with the frame. Later on, you are going to put the top. but that members are connected with each other permanently so that we can fulfill our requirement. And in that case, when we are going to join these members together, then we are going to have these three different options. Either we can go for the bolted joints, if as said that bolted joints are easily assembled and disassembled. Okay, where the frequency of assembly and disassembly is the high, in that case we can prefer the bolted joints. And the frequency of assembly and disassembly is very low, in that case we can prefer that welded joints, because that joints are permanently going to create the joint between two different members. Also, they are not going to drill some holes in that component, and stress concentration is not going to increase. That's why welded joints are preferred, where the frequently assembly and disassembly is not required. And later on, we are going to see riveted joints. Nowadays, very few machineries or components are there where the riveted joints are used. But in previous, we can say century, in 20th century, you can see every application or much more applications of riveted joints. Because at that time, the welding procedure was not invented, or it was invented but was used for the limited applications. Getting me? In that case, for the huge constructions, riveted joints were prepared. For that, you can see the railway bridges, which has manufactured or which has actually constructed by Britishers. Okay, you may see somewhere on railway station that riveted joints are used. Even you can see some railway wagons also, they are using riveted joints. And in today's era also, for the railway wagon manufacturing, sometimes these riveted joints are used. Even for the water tank, for manufacturing of that water tank, riveted joints were used. And you can find it on somewhere roof of that railway station, because these are the old constructions which you can find in railway department only. Okay, or where the government, what we can say, buildings are there, you can find these old constructions and old equipments also. So in that case, these riveted joints were used. Even sometimes for the steam engines, these riveted joints were used for manufacturing of shell of boiler. You can easily find it. One engine has been placed in Pandharpur railway station. You can visit over there and you can see that railway engine. It is a steam engine, and all that has been manufactured in UK, and later on it has been transported to the India. So a history has been also written on that engine. One board is provided on that. All the history has been written, and you can check how the manufacturing process or which type of components are used, or how they are getting assembled with each other. What is the, you can imagine what is the working of that steam engine. Okay. All these things you can observe on the railway station of Pandharpur. Okay, this is a good thing which is available near to us, which you can visit and you can study all that things. Okay, so these bolted joints that we'll study first. A screwed joint is mainly composed of two elements, and that you are going to call as a bolt and nut. Okay, the screwed joints are widely used where the machine parts are required to be readily connected and disconnected. As I have discussed that readily they can assemble together and disassemble. Okay, or easily if you want to assemble and disassemble frequently without damaging to the machine or the fastener of that particular machine. Okay. So that's why we are going to use these bolted joints. This may be for the purpose of holding or adjustment in assembly. Sometimes we are going to have some adjustment also in terms of dimensions with the help of these bolted joints. But that type of facility is not available in case of welded joints. Once you are going to form that joint, then it will become permanent joint. Over there, you cannot make any changes. But in case of bolted joints, that geometrical tolerance or geometrical adjustment can be done. Okay. Or sometimes for the service inspection, repair, or replacement, sometimes you want to replace some parts from that assembly, then we are going to prepare these bolted joints. You might have seen in case of engine, IC engine, these bolted joints are prepared because it is frequently required to have the maintenance of that engine. Or sometimes it may be for the manufacturing or for the assembly reason. All these are the reasons for which it is required to assemble and disassemble the machine component or machinery. And in that case, the bolted joints are prepared. Now, these are the some list where the bolted joints are having some advantage. Also, they are having some disadvantages also. You can increase 2 more advantages and 2 more disadvantages in this case. Okay, so I'll read the advantages. The screw joints are highly reliable in operation. Then screw joints are convenient to assemble and disassemble, as already we have seen. A wide range of screw joints may be adapted to the various operating conditions. Though you are going to use these type of joints in cold days or in winter where the snowfall is there, or in hot area in some applications where the temperature is very high, as in case of boiler, you can use this screw joints. And screw joints are relatively cheaper to produce due to standardization and highly efficient manufacturing process. This nut and bolts are manufactured in bunch, okay, and that's why you can use that that manufacturing process. That is nothing but you can manufacture it in bundles, or you can manufacture it in groups. That's why manufacturing cost will get reduced, and hence they are cheaper. Getting so you can increase 2 or 3 more advantages in that case. And disadvantage is that it requires hole to drill in component which you want to join together. Hence stress concentration get increased. Okay, and we have to take care of the stress concentration, and we have to use higher thickness material or high strength material, and we have to consider the stress concentration. If you are going to use these joints for the loading condition, different loading condition, that is nothing but if you are going to use for the fluctuating loading condition, the joints, then the stress concentration will get hampered, and hence we have to unnecessarily use higher costly materials as well as high materials, or material quantity will get increased, and hence cost of that particular component will get increased. Okay, so that is the major disadvantage of these bolted joints. Any question? We'll stop here today. You can write your roll numbers in chat box, because next teacher is waiting for you and he is about to start his lecture. After writing your roll number, you have to leave this meeting and you can join metallurgy lecture.